good people don't smoke marijuana.
Well, I've known Larry for a long time.
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
The medical marijuana. The medical marijuana. Radio show. The medical marijuana for you and me. Ah, yeah, the medical marijuana. Whoa, 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 yeah, the medical. It's the medical marijuana show. You will know.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Medical Marijuana Radio. This one is for Saturday, the 22nd of December 2018. Christmas coming up in a couple of days. The hemp bill passed this week, and you know, our guest is going to be Veronica Carpio, who's going to talk about what is legal, what is not legal. And this is Veronica here. And of course, I'm your host, Larry Love, and we're here every week to bring you the latest information. We're kind of digitizing the fight for medical and legal cannabis, and it's sort of a digitized history. We've been doing it. This is our second to last show of our 9th year. We're going to start our 10th year after January, and we're here to help. So Veronica is going to be here after the break, and we're going to go through the Farm Bill and what's legal, what's not legal. Are CBD gummies legal? What do you think out there, people? Well, the answer is no, and we're going to tell you why in just a little bit. But first, we're going to give you some news. We're going to go around the states and see what's going on, how they're fighting in every state. This first piece is a Georgia father who's fighting to legalize. I believe Georgia just has CBD there, but he's got a sick child, and he's fighting hard.
Joining me now from Charlotte, North Carolina, is Sebastian Cott. Sebastian's son, Jagger, is one of the patients in the group that is suing the Department of Justice. Sebastian, thanks so much for joining us. Can you please tell us a little about your son's condition and what your argument is in this lawsuit?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much for having me. So my son's name is Jagger, and he has a very rare mitochondrial disease called Lee's disease. It's very progressive and a terminal disease with no cure. So Jagger, life expectancy for the kids that have Lee's disease, if they are diagnosed, he has a diagnostic before the age of 2, 95% of them do not make it past 4. So right before his 4th birthday, we decided to take Jagger to Colorado because we live in Georgia, and medical cannabis was illegal at the time in Georgia. So we took Jagger to Colorado and became medical refugee, and we put Jagger on medical cannabis. Right away, we saw great improvement. He starts smiling again, things he hasn't done for years. His seizures went down, his pain went down, and we were able to take him off some of his very strong medication like morphine and Oxycontin. And after a year in Colorado, we moved back to Georgia because we were able to pass a bill in Georgia in the meantime. And Jagger, a few months ago, just turned 8. So now he's twice his life expectancy. He passed his life expectancy by 4 years now.
Wow, incredible.
Yeah. In great part because of medical cannabis.
Well, where does the lawsuit currently stand, and how would your son and other patients benefit from marijuana being taken off the Schedule I list?
So the lawsuit, we just went to New York last week, and we went to the Second Circuit Court of Appeal, and we did an appeal. So now we're waiting to hear back. Either they're going to agree with the government that the lawsuit should not be going forward, or they're going to send it back to the lower federal district court in Manhattan, and we actually will go to trial, which is what we're hoping for. The lawsuit, the way the lawsuit will help is by taking cannabis off of Schedule I, therefore making it more accessible for patients like Jagger. Jagger right now cannot travel because what he has is in Georgia, he has a right to have possession of cannabis oil, but he cannot take it out of the state. For example, I cannot go to Charlotte, where I am today, on a trip. He couldn't come with me because he would be illegal, and if we get caught with his oil, I could end up in jail, and Jagger could be taken by child services. So Jagger cannot travel anywhere at all around the country. because he cannot take his cannabis anywhere with him. And there are thousands and thousands of kids like that and patients like that cannot travel, or that live in states where they can't even have access to cannabis in the first place unless they go into the black market, which is obviously very unsafe and very dangerous. So if we win this lawsuit, it will take cannabis out of Schedule 1, and it will just make it much more accessible for the patients all over the country.
Well, why do you believe the federal government is so hesitant about making a change?
Well, there's a big stigma with cannabis. There's a lot of misinformation that's been there for many years, and the government is not reading and ready. But the government is being a little bit hypocritical in this entire thing, because just a few weeks ago, the FDA approved cannabis-derived medication as a Schedule 5 medication to treat seizures. So the government also owns several patents on cannabis, including one saying that cannabis is a neuroprotectant and antioxidant and is good for your brain. It can help with brain issues. So the government is doing all that, and at the same time, they're keeping it in Schedule 1, saying it has no medical purposes and is highly addictive, which we know now it's not true at all. So we are just trying. We have the fact, we have the science behind us to show that we are right, and cannabis should be an option for people that want to try it.
Well, as you mentioned, the New York City appeals hearing was just last week, and depending on the judge's decision, the next appeal could be at the Supreme Court level. What are you looking forward to most if that's the case?
Going to the Supreme Court would obviously be a very big deal, but Supreme Court don't take a lot of the cases. So if we were to be taken, if the Supreme Court agreed to hear our case, that would obviously be very big. But what we're looking forward to is either going to the Supreme Court or the lower court. We just want a chance to prove and to show that cannabis has medical property and cannabis can help people patients and kids like Jagger.
Yeah, it was remarkable to hear about your son's progress. Sebastian Cott, thanks so much for sharing your story with us.
Thank you very much.
One of the things that they could do to prove that medical cannabis, cannabis is good for medical purposes, is looking at the House and Human Services' own patent of 6630507. I mean, it says it's good for Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and shrinking tumors and all kinds of stuff. So our government just needs to look at itself and stop being hypocritical. There's a father that really knows his stuff and is fighting hard. Let's move down to Florida, where John Morgan has been fighting for the medical cannabis program there, and it passed with 70%, one of the highest margins of any state, and it passed with the knowledge that they were supposed to be able to smoke, and they've been fighting for this the smoking rights for a while. So here is just a brief news conference, I guess, after some ruling the other day where it's been put on hold in the appeals court. Here's John Morgan.
Today is a day that should not have been necessary, other than the Florida legislature decided not to do their job. Now look, here's the background on all this. 71% of Floridians voted to legalize medical marijuana in Florida. By all calculations that I've ever been able to determine, it's the largest vote ever in the history of America for a marijuana initiative. 60% is a landslide, 71%, I don't know what that is. And I do know that the people of Florida knew exactly what they were voting on when they voted. And when they were voting on it, the vast majority, if not 100%, knew that smoke was included. So the fact that we're here today is really unnecessary. And
that was from the Orlando Sentinel's website. Also from the Orlando Sentinel's website is this, well, not this next piece, but maybe the one after that. Before we get to that, we have a football player named Cedarius Bryant from Sanford, Florida. We're going to talk about him in a minute. But in Orlando, there's an Orlando-based minorities group that is holding classes in regards to cannabis. Here's a nice little story here.
With any industry, if you look at a Coca-Cola, if you look at a Walmart, if you look at United Airlines, Delta Airlines, they all have a commitment to diversity. The medical marijuana industry across the board, we should have the same type of corporate social responsibility that makes sure that we're outreaching to communities, So the work of the organization, Minorities for Medical Marijuana, we want to make sure folks own something. They want to own a piece of the pie and not just be consumers and workers. And so that's exactly, how I feel and passionate about it. And that's our goal as an organization, is to help people get connected.
Yeah, I've used this. Okay, so this is the only one we have at the moment.
Some of the issues that minorities are facing on the business side, it comes to access to capital. Because think about it, you got to pay for, your architectural engineering drawings of your dispensaries. You have to then also have your attorneys, so all your attorney and legal fees. Then you have all your consulting fees. Then someone has to write your application for you. So literally, you could be out of pocket almost $1 million before you even know if you get a license or not. Each state is setting their own body of regulations and rules. This is when I see a lot of individuals from communities of color, they're joining together and forming collectives. I will say that there is still a lack of license holders. We need more in the marketplace. We need it to go into our geographically tough areas, our rural areas, in our communities of color, where we want to have a dispensary there in these communities, serving these communities. They should not have to take the bus. They should not have to, go miles and miles out of their way from their home to be able to have access to a physician and also have access to the medicine.
Safe access, that's what we've been fighting for years, for safe access. And it's a fight because there's people that are still against us. And we'll talk about Utah in a few minutes because there's a story out of there. Boy, are they being strict. But staying in Florida, in Sanford, Florida, there's a football player by the name of Cedarius Bryant. And he's an advocate for CBD as an opioid alternative to the terrible punishing that these football players go through. So here is this report about Cedarius Bryant and CBD.
The first thing I remember was waking up in the hospital asking, did we win?
At the hospital, he was prescribed opioids, but he'd already found his own way to cope.
Pills, even playing football or taking Lortabs or codeines or whatever they prescribed me to take, I never really did take those. I always turned to cannabis.
Cedarius first started using marijuana in college.
The use of it is very high in college. I don't know if it's for pain, for medicinal reasons, but I used it for both.
Marijuana is illegal at the federal level, but is legal for medicinal purposes in over half the states, including Florida. For NCAA athletes, it's on the banned substance list. At Ole Miss, Cedarius failed 7 drug tests, never got suspended once.
Hey, man, we're gonna give you one more chance. If you mess up on this chance, you're going home. You ain't got to worry about sentence no more. Your scholarship is gone.
Meanwhile, at Colorado State, Cedarius' lifelong friend and former Lake Mary football player Treyas Geralds was facing a similar dilemma.
It's my medicine, right? And people misconstrue, right? When I say playing high, they go on this tent, their mind goes left.
Treyas didn't just use marijuana after games. He used it before.
I was high in every game except for one, right? So in all my games, I played under the influence.
Treyas was never tested, but ultimately left the football program to protect his scholarship. Cedarius went to rehab, stopped smoking, and was able to graduate from Ole Miss. Now, they're advocating a marijuana alternative.
When I was utilizing, the full plant, I didn't have as much knowledge about CBD.
CBD, or cannabidiol, is derived from the cannabis plant, just like marijuana. The key difference? It contains low amounts of THC. That's the compound that makes you high and test positive on a drug test.
It's like the same thing, but without the psychoactive feeling that you get in your head. You don't get the feeling that your body is in the cloud. I mean, that your head is in the clouds.
They both swear by its pain-relieving effects. However, because it comes from the cannabis plant, it is still banned by the NCAA and major American sports leagues. But in 2018, the World Anti-Doping Agency took CBD off its banned substance list, opening the door for change.
I think there are a couple of things that cannabis can do for you.
Dr. Hervé Damas is a state-certified cannabis physician based in Miami that works with Treyas and Cedarius.
Treatments that involve THC, CBD at different ratios.
Dr. Damas can order marijuana for patients who come in for a variety of state-accepted ailments. He can also recommend and sell CBD.
These are our hemp oil extract CBD containing gummy bears.
If the CBD comes from hemp and contains 0.3% or less THC, it can be bought without a prescription.
So a lot of players use CBD, they just cannot advertise it.
He knows athletes because he was one. He played linebacker for the Buffalo Bills but suffered a career-ending knee injury. He's experienced the relief from CBD firsthand.
Wow. Now my headaches are gone, the insomnia is gone, the anxiety is gone, the body aches are gone, and I'm not high.
But if it is such a miracle drug, why isn't it widely accepted?
Well, I think there are, mixed feelings about it, actually. I think there are many of us that believe that it is probably effective for a whole variety of things.
Dr. Jay Falk is an emergency room doctor in Orlando. He believes CBD could be an effective alternative to opioids for chronic pain, but says more research needs to be done.
Despite the fact that it appears to work, we're not really sure exactly how it works yet, and we certainly are not completely aware of any potential unintended consequences.
Serdarius and Treyas are prepared to do the heavy lifting. Together, they are part of a cannabis consulting group called Motives Made Just for Athletes. The goal? To educate players, teams, and coaches about CBD.
We want to get out and we want to educate athletes, educate parents, educate doctors, educate everybody in the neighborhood to tell them that it is an alternative.
In Sanford, I'm Pal Welter, Spectrum Sports 360.
Okay, so the hypocrisy in this story is that Serdarius played for Ole Miss, and Ole Miss is where the government, the federal government's growing their crappy weed to do research on. The ones that have been sent out to Irv Rosenfeld and the other people that were in the federal medical marijuana program, where there's only maybe 1 or 2 people left. Yes, it's grown at Ole Miss, which is where that young man is playing football. So how crazy and hypocritical is that? All right, let's move over to South Dakota. And the sale of CBD oils is still banned in South Dakota despite the Farm Bill. That's what they say.
The Farm Bill also legalizes hemp and its byproducts, allowing CBD oils to be sold almost everywhere. Meredith James has reactions from some local businesses.
Some businesses in the Black Hills are feeling backlash from South Dakota Senate Bill 95, which contradicts the 2018 Farm Bill. SB 95 only allows CBD oils to be used if prescribed by a doctor, not over the counter.
It's really kind of upsetting to be a member of the last state of the union, or virtually the last 3 states of the union that allow these products to be sold in their state.
For the Hemporium Boutique in Rapid City, law enforcement asked for all CBD products to be removed off the shelves. At the time, the shop had only been open for a few months. The owner is now feeling the frustrations from his customers.
We have a lot of angry customers. I mean, they're right down furious about this state being so ignorant to what these products can do and how they help people.
And for one local business store owner, this tip jar is helping her make all the difference right here in South Dakota.
We kind of got the idea that we would rent a bus and take it to Pierre to educate them about what CBD really is. It's not cannabis, it's not marijuana. Well, to rent a bus and a driver, it's about $1,000.
How much do you guys have right now?
$260.
One organization, New Approach South Dakota, aims to educate anyone in the state that might have questions about CBD oils, their uses, and what they believe can be positive benefits for the right people.
When people hear CBD or hemp even, they go straight to like reefer madness. So we just try and bring like actual education to them, real information, unbiased, nonpartisan, just facts.
In Rapid City, I'm Meredith James.
We reached out to Kristi Noem to get her input on the topic. This was a statement we received. Governor-elect Noem maintains that substances derived from cannabis should go through the proper FDA approval process, as other medications are required to do.
And food is also required to go through FDA, and we're going to talk about that with Veronica in just a little bit. But before we go and take a break, we have a couple more stories for you. This next one is just so terrible. A cancer survivor in Arizona is facing prison time. They have a crazy law, and it's very controversial in Arizona. Waxes and concentrates are illegal, and they're legal, and they're not, and they are, and who knows what the state of this is. But here's a man that is fighting cancer. He gets pulled over. Well, let him tell you, sir.
It has been 8 years since Arizona voters passed medical marijuana, and some patients still face prosecution. It's a legal dispute headed to the state Supreme Court, and KJZZ's Will Stone reports on one man whose case could depend on what they decide.
Adam Wanko didn't hide his marijuana from the officer who pulled him over. The 48-year-old was making a trip north from Phoenix and driving with a suspended license.
He asked me if I had any drugs in the car, and I gave it to him, and I gave him my card also because I knew that he was going to want to see that.
The officer informed Wanko his car would be towed, then turned his attention to a cosmetic container in the center console with a small lump of honey-colored wax. Wanko explained it was cannabis oil he'd picked up from a medical marijuana dispensary.
And when he came back, he informed me that he was going to arrest me for possession of a narcotic. Really, I thought he was joking at first, but he never said just kidding, though.
Instead, he booked Wanko into county jail on felony drug charges. For Wanko, the situation quickly changed from baffling to terrifying.
I wasn't able to see my doctor or go to my treatments. My dose of chemotherapy took 3 days to administer to me, and I did it once every 3 weeks.
Wanko's driver's license photo shows a large lump protruding from his neck. Squamous cell carcinoma, stage 4. Wanko had begun using medical marijuana, like the wax, as a last resort for managing the side effects.
I don't know if I'd be alive right now if I didn't have it. I know that my doctor was going to cut me off of treatment because I lost 80 pounds over a period of weeks and I was emaciated.
Wanko had stopped working because of his illness and couldn't afford the $2,500 for his release. As the days went by, he worried he'd never get out.
So I have a tube that goes into my jugular and then down my jugular into my heart, and that's what they would put the chemo in. I was telling them, look, I got this condition here, but they weren't sympathetic toward that.
About 2 weeks later, a friend discovered he was in jail and managed to get him out. Another county, that bit of cannabis wax may never have landed Wanko in jail. But he'd unknowingly strayed into one of the zip codes where this product, sold in nearly every dispensary under the guidance of the state health department, is deemed a narcotic, illegal, even for patients with medical marijuana cards.
It just doesn't make sense for the government to sell it to the population and then arrest me for having it. That means that when I'm convicted, that the health department is basically okaying the sale of narcotics to the populace.
This dilemma has gone on for years in Arizona without any clear resolution. But this summer, it took on new urgency when the state appeals court upheld the conviction of another patient who went to prison for cannabis oil. He'd been arrested in the same place as Wanko, Yavapai County, where the top prosecutor, Sheila Polk, happens to be one of the most vocal opponents of marijuana. She spoke to KJZZ in September about the appeals court ruling.
This case affirmed the way cannabis has always been treated in this county by my office, which is that it's a narcotic drug. So we haven't changed how we do business at all.
Polk's office is now arguing that case in front of the Arizona Supreme Court, and what's decided may determine whether patients like Wanko go to prison. And he has no wiggle room because there are already several drug-related felonies on his record. His presumptive sentence is 10 years for the cannabis oil. Jared Keenan used to represent people like Wanko as a public defender in Yavapai County.
They're going after those least able to fight back, indigent, poor criminal defendants.
Keenan now works for the ACLU, one of the groups asking the Supreme Court to exonerate patients like Wanko. He says Arizona's voter-approved medical marijuana law clearly includes these products.
At the time that they possessed this cannabis, they would have had no indication whatsoever that this was illegal.
Patients aren't the only ones confused. After Wanko's arrest, jurors repeatedly tried to clarify the laws in play and why he was being charged. Court records show them questioning the prosecutor, who later claimed that dispensaries, the very ones regulated by the state, were illegally selling the product. One thing that was never mentioned to the grand jury: cancer. Adam Wanko's cancer.
This isn't like a misunderstanding about a tax form. This is like a medical condition that I was dealing with to save my life.
Wanko's still fighting the case, but he says it's hard to stay optimistic. Not that long ago, he was so worried he almost took a plea deal. 2.5 years.
When I had to sign right there and it said that I'm admitting guilt, how do you do that? How do you do that? How do you do that after, what I've been through?
Wanko says he never intended to be some martyr for medical marijuana. He just knows it helped him hold on. Will Stone, KJZZ News, Phoenix.
How terrible to allow the dispensaries to sell the product that he is arrested for, and he's a patient. Show them the card, the whole business. We wish him the best of luck, for sure. Okay, before we take a break, Utah, probably one of the last states we'd ever think of as being medical cannabis. Who knows when they'll ever get wrecked. But, you know, restrictions, you know, are just too much, and they're wasting a lot of money. Listen to this story.
Hey, the state of Utah has started laying the groundwork for dispensing medical marijuana.
The first order of business, developing a system to track every single marijuana plant and hiring then a boss to oversee it all.
Yeah, Christina Flores on the story for us today. This sounds like a big job for one person, Christina.
Yes, it is, and the job just opened a few days ago. Already, they have had dozens of applicants. That manager is going to work here at the Department of Agriculture and will oversee marijuana growers, manufacturers, and even talk to lawmakers, and will also oversee a system that will track every single marijuana plant.
Yeah, I lose sleep over it every night.
Scott Erickson, Deputy Commissioner for the Utah Department of Agriculture, says the state's medical marijuana law is keeping everyone on his staff very busy.
This program is receiving more scrutiny than anything else we deal with at the Department of Agriculture.
But soon there will be a new medical marijuana boss hired by the state.
We have 61 applicants as of this morning.
Is that more or less than you thought?
More than we expected.
The medical cannabis program manager will oversee the creation of the new system that involves contracting with growers, manufacturers, and pharmacies. He or she will also answer to lawmakers who created the new law.
We hope to have somebody hired right after the start of the year.
And so there's that.
Rich Oborn with the State Department of Health says the other big task right now is creating a central verification system to track and tag every marijuana plant from the time it's 8 inches tall.
It's very important that the product is monitored so it's not diverted on the black market or anything.
Erickson says from a food perspective, it's important to track cannabis plants in case there's a problem, like the recent recall with contaminated lettuce.
If there needs to be a recall, health can go back to those patients and say, take this off your shelf, throw them away, destroy them.
So whoever gets hired for the cannabis program manager position, that person could earn up to about $80,000 a year. That electronic verification system that will track every single one of those marijuana plants is going to cost the state somewhere between $1 and $5 million.
There's your waste of money, man. $5 million or even a couple $1 million to over-regulate. Error on the side of law enforcement is never good. But they need to be educated, law enforcement, that's for sure. All right, we'll be right back with Veronica Carpio, and we're going to talk about the passing of the hemp bill, the 2018 Farm Bill, right after this.
It's all about the 420 MMJRadio. It's all about 420 a little marijuana to stimulate your appetite. And if you have glaucoma, it could make it right. So have yourself a little sativa, and have yourself a little indica. May you take your nausea away. It can elevate your mood and make you feel better today. Oh, and may all your medical problems be made right. The medical marijuana.
Hi, this is Steve D'Angelo, and you are listening to Medical Marijuana Radio.
And we're back. And online I have Veronica Carpio from Grow Hemp, Colorado. Veronica is one of the foremost authorities in Colorado and elsewhere on hemp and the 2018 Farm Bill. And, of course, this week we all know that the leader of our country signed the 2018 Farm Bill. So, Veronica, there's good, there's bad, and there's ugly. Where do we go from here now that it's signed?
Yes, thanks so much for having me on your show. I do appreciate it. And your coverage of this topic, which will be ongoing probably for a while. So I guess the question is, how do I feel about it? I guess I feel the same that I did before it was signed. I'm not very excited about it. I'm disappointed in multiple aspects, such as specifically, number one, the drug felon ban specifically. Even though there was a compromise that, well, what they called a compromise that came to heads and ended up getting into language and signed, still is not a compromise to me. And I also find it extraordinarily hypocritical of like Mitch McConnell and some of the other ones up there at the federal level who supported a justice reform bill and just passed that, but yet they banned drug felons specifically from industrial hemp for 10 years.
That's pretty hypocritical for them to be doing justice reform and then at the same time punishing people.
Exactly. It's kind of a double whammy, especially for any drug felon, even marijuana felons. It's a very difficult life. Let me just put it like that. And it's an ongoing, lifelong struggle. So 10 years, they have to wait past the date of their conviction, state or federal conviction. And there was an exemption made in there, kind of like a grandfather clause for people who were already registered or licensed under a state 2014 Farm Bill pilot program. So even though I'm safe now, it still is tragically disappointing for me because I hate the discrimination and I just think it's not corn and carrots as it was intended.
Right.
Number one.
Was there other stuff that was like slipped in at the last moment that we don't know about or didn't know about?
That was, it's more like we didn't know about it. I mean, it was more like it wasn't brought to public attention. So like the felon thing that was brought to public attention, but at the same time that felon language was introduced or amended in the Senate version of the Farm Bill, there was actually two other provisions that McConnell put in. One of those provisions was basically if you get caught lying, you have a problem and you're not going to be able to be part of hemp. The other real issue that should have been brought to public attention was also FDA. So FDA basically was given a concession that nothing would change in the Federal Food and Drug and Cosmetic Act once the Farm Bill passes, and that FDA still had full enforcement authority. This is something now everyone is starting to realize is the number one problem that did not get fixed with the passing of the Farm Bill. So there's a lot of upset parties and confusion.
Right. So we're talking about the FDA still has control over CBD if it's used in edible products, right, for food. Of course, that applies to everywhere but Colorado, right? Because you guys did something different there.
Well, FDA is basically the regulator over all things for human consumption and use, food, drug, and cosmetics, as well as animals. And FDA has always taken a pretty clear position where they stand with CBD. It's always been a Schedule I controlled substance, is not allowed for human use and consumption or animals, and cannot cross state lines. When Colorado passed the hemp foods bill, we basically went directly against FDA's position and turned it all into a food additive or herb. So it's regulated under our state health department, and they have jurisdiction, and there's certain things that we have to comply with, such as our finished products have to be 0.3% THC total and below. So FDA did come out further on their website after GW Pharmaceutical got approved and said that it cannot go into food, et cetera, et cetera. Yesterday, as soon as the Farm Bill was signed, FDA made a press release and clarified their position further. CBD is a drug. In their opinion, it's either Schedule 1, unless it's a formulation by an FDA-approved drug, which would be then Schedule 4 or 5. I forget which one they put GW in, but it's the lowest schedule.
So how does that affect? It affects other states more than it affects Colorado because you have your hemp foods bill, right? So does that mean that gummies basically are illegal everywhere except for Colorado?
Well, generally speaking, yes. Colorado is unique as the only state currently right now in the USA that has actually defined what a hemp product is, defined who the regulatory authority is over those products, manufacturers and producers, and also regulates them. So we are unique in that aspect because of the hemp foods bill. So yes, we're like the most protected state right now in the country because our proactive and force, our laws. The other states, there are other states like Alabama, for example, they just recently reversed their ban on CBD products and now seem to think they're okay. I think they're going to reverse their position, but right now they seem to be a CBD friendly state. There's places like South Dakota that have made it perfectly clear CBD is by prescription only. You cannot possess, manufacture, grow any of those things or consume a CBD product unless it's FDA approved and prescribed by a doctor. So it's going to depend. New York, they have just proposed some very crazy rules and restrictions on CBD products out there. They will not allow them to be as food. You cannot smoke them or vape them. You cannot sell or market to children. All, CBD products have to come from New York hemp. So there's
really New York hemp.
Depend.
So they can't import from Kentucky. It has to be grown. So is that something that's going? Do you think that's going to proliferate to other states where they're going to want to keep it within the state?
So FDA makes it clear it can't cross straight state lines right now. So that's one issue on its own. The only way that I can see this being resolved quickly is for the states to enact like a hemp foods bill like Colorado did. And then their regulatory jurisdiction would be the state health departments, which already deal with foods and manufacturers of foods, etc. And then that will resolve a lot of issues in our states and possibly help also fix some of the interstate transportation and interstate issues and all that which is not fixed from the Farm Bill. So FDA is probably going to give us a limited amount down the road. FDA is probably going to have open discussions with the public and determine what an over-counter amount is versus what a drug prescription milligram amount is.
Right. So with the Farm Bill that was just signed, what kind of products can be shipped across state lines?
So that's a complicated question the Farm Bill didn't clear up. It said in the Farm Bill, specifically in the hemp language, that states and tribes can interfere with, transfer of hemp and hemp products. But if you go to places like South Dakota and you try to, bring CBD products through or CBD hemp buds, you may get arrested and might go to jail for a long time. So that is unclear, even though the Farm Bill says one thing, the state's laws may restrict it more, and through their over-restriction, then I believe they supersede currently what the Farm Bill says. So it really is going to be a matter of us watching what happens down the future. I mean, we know that people have been charged already with CBD. They've been put in jail. There's people looking at felony charges or who have already been convicted of felony charges in other states just for CBD.
So you're saying that even though federally there's new laws about hemp and CBD, states within their own state borders and lines, they can make their own rules that are more strict than the federal rules and actually maybe even ban hemp growing?
Yeah, the Farm Bill language for hemp primarily addresses cultivation. and the jurisdiction for cultivation in hemp will now go to the USDA. They have created a definition for industrial hemp, so it's not part of the Controlled Substance Act, right? They did some amending in the Controlled Substance Act as well, but really now there's a definition of industrial hemp. That industrial hemp farm commodity, agricultural commodity, is now going to be regulated under USDA.
All right, so go ahead.
All states and tribes, their programs, whether existing now or later, have to be approved by the Secretary of Ag, which is USDA. Right now, there will be about probably 12 to 18 months. I'm hearing of time frame USDA has to implement a program, because Kentucky, I believe, they submitted their application today to USDA. But that was completely pointless because there's no program in place. They still got to figure out the rules and regulations, but it only really goes to cultivation. Any product production really ultimately is going to be FDA for anything human consumption or use.
So we're talking about CBD oil that people take, let's say, or tinctures and so forth, because that's for human consumption edibly.
Right.
That is currently illegal unless it's approved by the FDA.
According to the FDA, it is illegal because it has CBD in it, and CBD is a main ingredient in an approved FDA drug.
So these articles I read about so-and-so restaurant or CBD cafe that they're putting CBD in coffee, it's totally illegal unless you're in Colorado.
Unless you're from Colorado, or the state is either turning a blind eye or there's some state law that enables it. So, for example, Michigan has legal language right now, a bill. It has not been signed by the governor, but is expected to, and that will address the allowance and, basically making CBD products and hemp-derived products legal.
Mm-hmm. So
it doesn't go ahead.
So over the last 2-3 years, GW Pharmaceuticals has lobbied in a lot of states and passed certain rules or laws or bills. I'm not even sure what they are or how it affects other people selling CBD. So like here in New Mexico, they passed something. I have no idea what it is. I've been trying all day to get somebody to tell me, explain it to me, and I'm not sure what it is. But did GW also work something in Colorado, and how does that affect what you guys have going on there?
Okay, so yes, to all those questions. No, just kidding. So in New Mexico, what I believe they did, they went and tried to basically make it a CBD only, by prescription, accessible, or doctor recommendation. So it was going to be restricted just to that. I believe there was someone who went and fought them through other efforts and got some kind of a little bit of a compromise made, still that it's under maybe your MJ program or something like this. In Colorado, we just completely made it all into food, so it's totally legal now. Other states, they don't have any of that in place, so it is currently an issue that has to be addressed. Like right now, states and tribes need to address it. They either decide to go to food or hemp, and that was the problem with GW Pharmaceutical. When they came to Colorado, they kept telling us that, they didn't want to hurt the hemp industry or our CBD products, and that wasn't their intent. And they wanted to help carve out 2 pathways that we could both, take advantage of. That was all a lie. I knew it the whole time it was a lie. And they did not want CBD or any other cannabinoids from hemp being treated as food additive, or herb here. They fought against that bill. They actually had some of the hemp people fight against that bill. It was very bad.
Right.
It ended up passing, but this is GW Pharmaceutical and other big pharma companies. They want control of the cannabinoids as drugs.
Sure. How does this affect people like Charlotte's Web product and so forth?
Well, Charlotte's Web at one time was one of the first people who got an FDA warning letter for making medical claims. Charlotte's Web is one of the pay-to-play members on the U.S. Hemp Roundtable, who's helped spearhead this whole hemp farm bill language with McConnell. CW Botanical also ironically, put a press release out yesterday, almost an hour or less after the Farm Bill was signed and FDA came out with their press release. So what does that tell me? What does that tell all of us? It tells us that people at the U.S. hemp round table that have big money, that have been spearheading this, knew the whole time that FDA was going to come out with this position of clarity and announce to everyone. And CW knew it, didn't say anything about it, and already had their press release prepared.
Wow.
I personally, yeah, it's a little shady. So I'm personally believe, which I can't prove, so this is just I can't prove what I'm about to say yet, but I believe that CW Botanical and a few other members on the U.S. Hemp Roundtable are going after FDA approval. So I'm not sure if there is a double-sided interest here, because they haven't been very honest, and their messages have been very misleading intentionally because they wanted support behind this bill. I could tell if we went and polled 100 people in the hemp industry or consumers of hemp that are reading news, 98% of them would say, yes, CBD is now legal in all 50 states if it's from hemp. And yes, hemp is completely legal, which is not true, either of those statements.
Right. I mean, obviously, CBD. Okay, so let me ask you, so would CBD topicals be legal? And they're not either.
No, so you're going to start hearing that because all of a sudden some people are like, oh, here's a way around it. No. And even if that was true, how many of us could have CBD topicals and lotions and lip balms? Come on, guys. Seriously, common sense here. So, no, it is anything for human consumption and use.
So it's not just about an edible product that you eat and put in your system by eating it. It really is topical. It's anything that the body absorbs, I guess, is a good definition.
Yeah, food, drug, and cosmetic.
Wow.
And that's... Mm-hmm.
Wow. So where do, when I say we, activists and people that want to fix the things that are wrong, where do you start now? It sounds to me like there's probably 500,000 little CBD boutiques all around this country. And can the FDA even afford the postage to send them letters? I mean, how are they going to regulate all, the toothpaste that's out of the tube right now?
Yeah, I mean, they opened Pandora's box when they, GW Pharmaceutical was approved as the first cannabis-based drug. So that Pandora's box cannot be opened. So my answer is obviously the hemp foods bill in the states. Anyone in those states need to get on it and be proactive and get a bill passed. It makes complete sense why they should do it. I think there will be a ton of bipartisan support at the Capitol as well as the consumers, even law enforcement.
Okay, so that being said, let me just interrupt because I want to get this out. A lot of the, obviously all the states are having their sessions starting in a couple of weeks. So right here in New Mexico, our session is starting. I think it's a long session this year.
Yeah.
So is there time to copy your bill and get some senator to try to set it up here?
Yeah, basically the Colorado Hemp Foods Bill is a template bill that anyone could use. They just really need to go find the right statute that it applies and maybe make some amendments. I'll be actually running another bill to kind of add on to the Hemp Foods Bill to even do more further clarification to help really eliminate the opportunity for FDA to come into our state. So we're still going to be spearheading moving forward on regulations and regulatory stuff for the hemp foods bill that we enacted in 2018, specifically regarding like our extractors and our concentrates, which are above 0.3, and testing, really food safety and consumer safety is what it boils down to. So yes, the answer to your question is yes, and I'm here to help anybody who wants to do that.
Has anybody approached you from New Mexico yet?
Yes, the ladies that had that event, we had talked, and I don't know where they're at with that right now.
Oh, I'll contact Kathleen. I know Kathleen and
Kathleen.
Jill. Kathleen and Jill. I'll contact them because obviously, if we have time to copy, what you guys did, or any state, actually, every state should be doing this.
Yeah.
Where can they see the template for your foods bill, hemp foods bill?
Well, so They can go to growhempcolorado.com, and under rules and regulations, there's a rules and regulations 2018 section. They'll find the hemp foods bill language there. It also is, there's some other information they may want to take a look at. We have like a new presentation that discusses and really defines who the jurisdiction and regulatory authority lays with hemp here in Colorado, both federally and state agencies. So that's probably a really important one for everyone to look at also. And then we just put a new FAQ for our hemp foods that would also be a good reference for people.
Mm-hmm.
So they can definitely find stuff there, and they're, welcome to sign up for our free newsletter or as a member to really, be proactive, no matter if they're in Colorado or not. That's a platform that is really branched out so big nationwide at this point. It just is called Grow Hemp Colorado.
Right, and you're having another one of your free conference calls on Wednesday, the 26th, the day after Christmas. What are you going to be discussing on that?
Yeah, I know. I was kind of contemplating whether I should even have it the day after Christmas, but business must continue on. So we are going to do those every other week. I used to do those all the time, and I just started them again. The last one we just did recently was on the Farm Bill, and that is uploaded to the website under weekly free hemp conference calls. And we're going to be doing those every other Wednesday at 2 o'clock Mountain Standard Time. And there's a free call-in number. Anyone can call in, too, without a PIN code.
Right. I think I have the number right in front of me. Hang on a second, and I'll read it off for everybody. If you want to join this conference call this week on Wednesday, it's 720 area code 820-1258. 720-820-1258. Now, a few minutes ago, you said something really interesting that just came back to mind to me. You just said that someone who's caught lying cannot be in the hemp industry. So if Mitch McConnell is caught lying, and Donald Trump, who we know Donald Trump is a liar, can Donald Trump and Mitch McConnell go into the hemp industry together? There you go.
I think it has more to do with like their application. So whatever applications end up coming out, if they end up getting caught lying or falsifying information, probably in that process, that's where it de factos to. I wish it was something like you were. That would be awesome if what you're suggesting would be the case.
I know. I guess you can be a pathological liar, and if you don't lie on your hemp application, you can get it processed. So, all right, before we go, first of all, I want to ask you, how can people tell if they're getting ripped off buying some CBD products, tinctures, oils, and so forth? Is there a ratio of like how many milligrams of CBD is in a tincture or an oil to how much money you're paying, and where's the line to where you're getting a good deal and where you're getting ripped off?
Yeah, that's kind of a complicated question, but to make it simple, part of the reason why Colorado did the hemp foods bill is because we had all these products floating around, and that was one of the questions we were asking ourselves. How do we know these are good? So down the road, we'll start seeing more structure with this, but really what needs to happen is that consumers have to do due diligence right now. They cannot just believe a website that makes claims. They really need to look at test results to see what kind of test results are provided to each batch. Each batch really needs to be tested, and test results should be loaded up for each batch on that company's website that customers can access. That's number one. Price per milligram on that type of stuff, that varies, especially what the initial extract, concentrate, or isolate was used, or whatever formulation they did. So that varies, but really it boils down to consumer doing some due diligence on the product, what the test results are, and then know what those labs are. Are those legit labs? Are those certified labs?
And if they won't show you the test results, don't buy from that company. That's an easy one to decipher right there.
Yeah, there's some real red flags people should look out for, especially when they say no THC. There's a lot of people that say there's no THC in their products, but people are still urinating, detecting hot on THC urine tests for their jobs. For example, the commercial transportation licenses, they have a zero tolerance policy. So there's a lot of people who've been losing their job with that kind of a license because they detect hot for THC, even though it may be undetectable or in low levels, it's still accumulating in their system. So red flag with that type of a company.
Right.
Some do have no THC, but they are 100% ready and able to prove it with test results.
Right. So,
another red flag,
yes,
real
please.
quick, would be a company that is making a lot of medical or health benefit claims on their product or website, telling you it's going to heal this or cure this, or any kind of marketing or verbiage like that. That's also a red flag.
So for instance, if a CBD store was to advertise on a radio show and advertise that our CBD is good for cancer and Alzheimer's and this and that, this would be illegal according to the new rules, right?
Well, it's always been illegal to make medical claims on anything that's not an FDA-approved drug. It's not new, but it's kind of new to all of us because that's what everyone's doing.
Right.
But that is not legal. It never has been, and it's not now. So no, medical claims, health claims, even when relaxation or sleep, I mean, things like this, nutrient claims and benefits, those are all off limits.
So it's better off not to say anything on your website if you're selling CBDs about what it's good for. Sell your product, keep it clean, don't charge a lot of money. My thing about CBD and THC, by the way, is if you can buy below like 8 cents a milligram around that area, I think that is a good deal for people. Okay, anything that's above, anything above 10 cents a milligram for either CBD or THC, I think is too high. But any final thoughts before we go today?
Yeah, I just want to also just remind people that hemp is a soil remediator, and it absorbs heavy metals and toxins, unlike corn and carrots. So it's not exactly a traditional agricultural crop and or final product for consumption. So I would just encourage, consumers who are buying products to also ask for heavy metal testing reports and pesticide, as well as sometimes microbial.
Right.
So you don't want to have a tainted product that has adulterants in it, like what I just mentioned, because there's no regulatory authority looking over these products or manufacturers. They're just kind of getting away with it until things get more established.
Right. I know here in New Mexico they don't even test for pesticides or maybe pesticides, but not heavy metals here in our medical cannabis program. So I mean, this has to proliferate to other states. We need to test for heavy metals. We need to test for pesticides. And, of course, hemp will pull out all kinds of bad stuff out of the ground if they're growing in a place that is not good. So, Veronica Carpio, again, will have a discuss FDA and CBD compliance on Wednesday, December 26th at 2 p.m. at area code 720-820-1258 if you want to join and listen. And it's growhempcolorado.com, right?
Yes, sir.
Veronica, thank you so much for making time today. It's an important subject. This just happened yesterday with the signing and everything, and so take a deep breath and maybe take a day off between now and the new year. You deserve it, and thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
No, thank you for your time and all your attention on these matters, and you have a great weekend and a Merry Christmas if I don't talk to you before then.
Yes, and Happy New Year. We'll be right back after this.
Sow the seeds, everybody. Sow the seeds, everybody. On the mountain, down in the valley. You're gonna reap just what you sow. Sow by walking, sow by talking, sow by everything you do. Don't mind no one. Keep on sowing, you're gonna reap just what you sow. Sow good seeds, everybody. Sow good seeds, everybody. On the mountain, down in the valley, you're gonna reap just what you sow. Hear the voice of Jesus calling. Who will come and wake the dead to the mercy of his ways. Here am I, the Lord's in me. medical marijuana. The medical marijuana radio show.
Well, thank you, Veronica Carpio, for, I think we explained a lot of stuff, and you know a lot of stuff. So people out there, read the laws and make your decisions. And again, what we told you about how to pick CBD products, do it. 8 cents, around 8 cents, over or under a penny or two a milligram. That goes for THC too. Anyway, I want to thank Veronica, also my 2 radio mentors, both with the initials HS. Thank you for your inspiration. If you'd like to be on the show, if you have a product to sell, a story to tell, you're an advocate, a patient, an activist, it's info@mmjradio.com. Again, info@mmjradio.com. If you'd like to hear some of our old shows, we're starting after January, our 10th year, so there's a lot of other old shows out there. It's medicalmarijuanaradio.com, or my YouTube channel is LSLove88. SoundCloud and Spreaker are MMJ Radio. On Cannabis Tube, I don't know what's happening with them. I'm just loading up shows, just me and a bunch of strippers. Not that there's anything wrong with that. But check out cannabistube.net, also on Now TV channel 937, and the CannaChannel.com's coming soon.
Shalom. Peace and love, and chaos where it needs to be.
Oh yeah, and fuck Trump.
Yeah.